Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 1 of HBO's Perry Mason, entitled Chapter 9. I gotta say, it's really great that I have to worry about explaining a title. And, I don't mind looking into the titles and explaining to you guys why I believe they named the episode what they named it. It's kind of fun. Like, Succession makes it real fun. Succession puts a lot of thought into it. But it is nice to not just, I can just skip over that. Like, I don't even have to think about that. I could just go straight into talking about the episode. So, before I get started talking about this episode, I do want to give like a little bit of a kind of like just my thoughts on the show as a whole, especially because there might be people watching this now who are new to the channel. And then also, I covered Season 1 technically, like I didn't have this channel yet, but I was doing it in a podcast form, and it was kind of fucking lazy. Like it wasn't all that great. It was just something like, okay, I want to start doing this. It later evolved into what became this channel, and then I got rid of the podcast. Somewhere out in the ethos is my thoughts on Season 1. Are my thoughts on Season 1? They're out there somewhere, maybe, possibly, I don't know. But like the Apple Podcast only allows you to, SoundCloud, which is where I was uploading my podcast into, only allows you to keep a certain amount if you don't have a paid subscription. And when I canceled it, it went from a paid subscription to a free one. And then the free one only has like a certain amount of space that probably would have only allowed, I don't know, a couple of podcasts on there. So even if I told you guys to search the podcast, there's no Perry Mason covers on it. But having said that, I really enjoyed this show. I heard people saying like, oh, Season 2 is way better than Season 1. And I'm like, you making Season 1 sound trash. Like, I didn't think Season 1 was trash. Like, I enjoyed Season 1. And I don't know if, I can't remember if it made, like, my top 10 list. I don't even know if I made a top 10 list for 2020. I probably did. But, I don't know, man. It's like the look of it. When I say look, I mean, like the sets, the way it's filmed, the costumes. It sounds weird saying costumes. They dress like regular people. But you get what I'm talking about. The authenticity of it. All of that I found to be really interesting. It's like my classmate Mara Lapierre-Sloop did the the production design. It feels that authentic. Actually, it doesn't even feel as good as her work. But it also has, of course, that Law and Order vibe, right? Like I'm sure everybody likes Law and Order. You like to watch these cases and watch them get solved, and you like to watch what happens in the courtroom where you learn everything that happened. And it's like that, but with a more unique tone, of course, because again, we're talking about the 30s. I'm talking about 1930s LA. Like I said, it's going to have a completely different vibe than Law & Order. And then it's also serialized, right? So rather than the episodic nature of, every Law & Order episode is this one case confined within the runtime of this episode, this whole season is going to be one case. It's serialized, and we're going to see that play out. We're going to learn about all of these characters, all of these relationships, all of these, whatever it is that caused the primary victim of this season to be killed. Not a spoiler to tell you that, but whatever the motive was for killing this person, we'll discover that. So like it's a different experience than watching something like Law and Order, but kind of same vibe, like a crime is committed, and now we, the audience, get to kind of collectively follow the individuals involved and see why this crime was committed, how this crime was committed, all that good stuff. So I'm really excited about season 2. I thought season 1 was great, but, well, I won't say great. It was really good. I enjoyed it. I was looking forward to season 2. And then I found out that the showrunners for The Nick, which was the Clive Owen? I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. I really liked him. He was in Children of Men, lots of other stuff. But he was on that show, and the showrunners from The Nick took over for this season. So it's entirely different showrunners for this year, entirely different directors. And I think that's probably going to be beneficial for the show to get some fresh hands on it and to get people who are already established as great as at what they do involved in this. And then you also have the fact that even though it's all different people, you still kind of keep the same vibe. So you don't really feel like you're losing anything. Like this episode, it didn't feel like I was watching a different show. It felt like I was watching the same fucking show, but it's like you kind of feel like, I know I'm in a little bit better hands now. So I think that's going to help this season as well. Not that it needs help, but I'm saying it's going to help, I think, make this season more enjoyable going forward. So let's talk about this episode real quick. Again, I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but I do want to say this doesn't really feel different from season 1 so far, at least, like I said. But this was very much this is what our characters have been up to since the end of last season kind of episode. And then it also sets up this season's story arc. So it's essentially a setup episode as well. But your general kind of like season premiere of a show that has established seasons prior to it. But if you don't remember season 1, congratulations. That's what the fuck I'm here for. You can skip it, I would say, or you can skip the previously on thing that they have, the recap, but it's actually pretty fucking good. But you can skip it because I am going to update you on what's happening with all of our main characters, spoiler free. And but like I said, the season 1 recap is actually pretty solid. But I'm going to start with Perry and Della because this episode makes it pretty clear that I think not just that Perry and Della are going to be the focal point for the protagonists, but I think they're going to explore, like, compare and contrast Perry and Della's worldviews, their views on morality, and how they're going to approach practicing law in this season. Because I already felt very much in this first episode that there's a conflict in viewpoint, and it doesn't play out in any kind of way in this episode, but you could tell it's one of those things where you could see Perry and Della becoming at odds at some point. And I like that because I'm going to talk about this in a moment, but no, I'm going to talk about it now. I love the interactions between Perry and Della because I think Matthew Rhys and what is her name? I don't want to say his name and then not say hers, but I really want to shout out this actress. It was Juliet something. Fuck, I can't find it in my notes. And I also don't want to lose my place either. Fuck, I feel like it's really disrespectful to not fucking find her name. So I'm going to try to find it because I'm like, that's not cool. Juliet Rylance, okay, is her name. Yeah, I feel better about that. I didn't want to be like, yeah, Matthew Rhys is some broad. I don't want to be that guy. But I think, now I see it in my notes. I think those two have great chemistry. When I say chemistry, I don't mean like sexual chemistry or something like that. But I feel like those two actors work well together. And I just like the Perry and Della dynamic. So I like the idea, even though I like them together as a pair, I kind of like the idea of them being at odds too, just because I think those two characters will have great scenes together in that situation. So at the end of last season, Perry had just officially become a lawyer, and he was starting his own firm with Della and Paul Drake, who was played by, I believe his name is Chris Chalk. He's been in a shit ton of stuff. Before Perry Mason, which season 1 was 3 fucking years ago, by the way. Before season 1, I think the thing I saw him in most recently was he was on Gotham. The Gotham show that was on, I want to say it was on Fox. He was on there. I don't even remember who he played, honestly. Did he play Lucius? I don't know. I get all the people confused because there's fucking 8 different fucking Batman things everywhere. But that's where that's the last thing I saw him in before this show. When we opened this season, we learned that Perry has moved out of criminal law and into civil law because Della says that's how you keep the doors open. And they're new. They don't want to, they don't want to flail out and fall out of business. So, they're a burgeoning law firm. They want to keep the doors open, so she says they should practice civil law instead of criminal law. And like I said, they established right away, I think, that Della is focused on success for the firm, and Perry remains focused on justice and doing the right thing. And that's where I could see that conflict coming up later in the season, where Perry might want to do something that he feels is right, but could be detrimental to maybe not the firm, but maybe like a case that they're working on. Maybe it's the main case. I don't know. But I feel like that's going to come, and I'm cool with that. So in this episode, they have a case that I don't know if it's going to extend outside of this episode. It's resolved. As far as I'm concerned, it's resolved in this episode, and we may not see it anymore, but there's a clue we're at least going to see one of the parties involved. They have a case in this episode that revolves around a grocery store where the owner of the store, Sonny, is played by the fucking legend Sean Astin, and Sonny is suing a former employee of the store for opening a store across the street and stealing all of his ideas, like all of his ideas that made Sonny's store successful. He says this employee that moved across the street, a guy named Ed Pertel, stole all those ideas. And they're in court, and he's getting questioned, and Ed's like, how could I steal the ideas? They're my own fucking ideas. Like, he had like a whole manual of ideas. He said he came up with the slogan, like all this kind of stuff, right? So he's like, I came up with all these ideas to help make the store successful. It worked. And he's like, and Sonny won't even give me extra money for my trouble, for all I've done to help make the store successful. He said, if you want extra money, you can open up your own shit. So Ed said, that's what the fuck I did. I opened up my own shit. And because he opened up his own shit across the street, Sonny is like, yo, he stole all my shit. But Pertel's case is that he didn't steal Sonny's ideas. He implemented his own ideas in a store. Now, I'm not going to go over what happens in the case because, no spoilers, but it doesn't pit Della against Perry or anything like that. But the main point of interest here comes with the course of action Perry would prefer to take, the course of action he ends up taking, the results of those actions, how he feels afterwards versus how Della feels afterwards. I think that's kind of what we're meant to take away from this case. And it doesn't play out in any extremely dramatic sort of way or anything, but you could tell it's the first thing in what will probably be several things that are going to pit Della and Perry against each other later. And I'm here for that. So let's see, what else now? Perry also spends a lot of time thinking about the Emily Dotson case from season 1. For reasons I'll keep to myself because no spoilers. But again, this is all being done to show Perry's values, how he processes right versus wrong. And I think it was pretty effective in this episode, everything they did with the Emily Dotson stuff. So, again, I'll spare you what happens, but if you're interested in watching, there you go. As far as Della goes, in addition to what I've already talked about, she seems bored in her relationship with Hazel. And Hazel, you remember from last season, Della's in a lesbian relationship with this woman named Hazel. And, of course, it's the 1930s. You can't just be gay out in the open. So, of course, it's a secret relationship. But in this episode, we learned that Della is seemingly bored in this relationship and has no problems exploring potentially cheating on Hazel. Now, I don't know if it has already happened in the past, and it does not happen in this episode, but very clearly, Della intends, I don't want to say intends on cheating, but she's opening the door for it to happen. She doesn't meet up with another woman, but she has, I would say, an inappropriate interaction with another woman. And despite how sexy that may be, I don't want that for Della. I don't know. I like Della. I don't want her to be out here cheating on a girl, but whatever. Let's move on to Paul. Paul appears to be living with his brother-in-law now. So with his wife and newborn baby in his brother-in-law's house. And I believe he's living there because since he quit being a cop to work for Perry, Perry doesn't have any work for him because he went from criminal to civil law, and there's no work for a cop in civil law. So it looks like Paul is essentially gone broke, and he has to live with his brother-in-law because Perry doesn't have any fucking work for him. And feeling bad about Paul's state, Perry has our old pal, Pete Strickland, who we remember from last season, give Paul a job. Paul's job is to follow a guy named Melvin Drake. He's a black guy. He's a big shot. He owns a hotel and a bunch of other shit. Apparently, he's like hot shit, but like within the Negro community, but like hot shit. Like if you're the king in the Negro community, you at least still on the radar of the white people. And Pete heard there might be a hit on this guy or something. He says something like, oh yeah, somebody else told somebody else something, and I don't know for sure, but that's what I heard. And he wants Paul to watch him. I feel like Pete's up to no good, but I guess we'll see. But I don't know. I don't like this. His whole thing of like, I don't really know what's going on. But I heard somebody else say something. Nah, Pete, no, I don't believe you. I don't know where that plot's going, but I don't expect it to stay separate from Perry's storyline for very long. That's for sure. And then, of course, there is a main plot, a main story arc that we're going to have this season. Just like the Emily Dotson case last season, there will be a new case this season. I can't tell you what that case is because that would be a spoiler. But just like last season's main story was about Emily, the setup portion of this episode sets up a new story. But I first can't talk about that in the non-spoilery way that I want to without first talking about the new characters that we meet in this episode. First one I want to talk about is named Brooks McCutcheon. He's some young, privileged white dude who comes from a rich family. Never see that, right? He wants to bring a baseball team to LA, among other things. He wants to do a whole lot of shit. He has a whole lot of big plans. I think his father is someone who is successful. He's the one that made all the money. He doubts whether or not Brooks can actually be a successful businessman. But Brooks has a whole lot of big dreams, including bringing a baseball team to LA. His father advised against it. And again, I don't know what is going to happen with this. But I will say, I do know that the Dodgers don't move to LA till 1957. So I know Brooks is shit out of luck. at least if they try to tie this to reality at all. I mean, like they're not obligated to do that. But yeah, Dodgers don't show up till 57. Lydell McCutcheon, that's Brooks' father. And like I said, he's the true big shot. He's the one who seems to actually have the money, all the influence. Like I said, he feels like his son's a bit of a fuck up who's in over his head, and he advises him to walk away from the baseball team. He's like, don't fucking do the baseball shit. I don't know why. I feel like there's a lot of ways in which Brooks is a fuck up, which, again, this is just me talking. It's not in the episode. Well, it kind of is, but not anything specific. Like, there's not a bunch of things he's fucked up that I can pinpoint. It's just they kind of paint this guy as kind of a fuck up. But his father seems really focused on him not doing the baseball thing. And I'm wondering why the father is so opposed to the baseball team. And this episode focuses on that a lot. Like, they talk about how they say something like Major League Baseball teams don't want to go west of the Mississippi. And I'm like, shit, man. Like, they're in fucking Canada now, but all right, whatever. He says that, you know, he's like, the New York has 3 fucking teams, which I guess they would have had at that time. Brooklyn, the Yankees, and, the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Mets, I guess they would have had at that time. And he's like, Chicago has 2, and I can't even get 1. So, but they're like, there's a big focus on this baseball team thing, and I'm wondering if the baseball team thing, I'm sorry I keep looking down, this my fucking bracelet thing is fucked up. Anyway, it's not anymore, but that's what I was fiddling with. There's a big focus on the baseball team thing, and I'm wondering why. I don't know what's going to come out of it, but there is a big focus on it, so it's going to be important. Anita St. Pierre is a woman we meet in this episode, and it's the aforementioned woman that Della has an inappropriate conversation with. She meets this woman while she's at lunch with a client. She's at lunch with a client. Her and this woman start exchanging like fuck eyes, like, yeah, you know, we're gonna go at it. Della says she has to go powder her nose. Side note, she goes to a powder room that looks like a fucking like country club. Like, why women's bathrooms don't look like that. She goes in there, there's like multiple setups to like put your makeup on with like chairs and vanity mirrors. She lights up a cigarette and shit. I'm like, yo, she got a cigar lounge? Like for women? Like, what the fuck is this? But she goes to this powder room after I fucking Anita St. Pierre, and then Anita St. Pierre follows her in there. They have a flirtatious conversation, and ultimately Della doesn't do anything. But like I said, she's putting her foot in the door. Melvin Perkins, I mentioned him earlier. We only see him in one scene, and it's from afar. We don't know what he's up to, but he's the black guy that Paul is set to watch. And then we also have Marion Kang. She's a new secretary that Della hired for the office without asking Perry. But she says that she claims they can afford it, so she's like, you know, now instead of me doing secretary shit that doesn't allow me to focus on law, now we got a secretary who could do secretary shit, and I can focus on law. They also have like a this season on thing. Again, it's not a next week. It's a this season on that plays afterwards. And we see Sean Astin's Sonny in that video clip, which again is kind of surprising because I kind of feel like his story arc was like enough for this episode. So I'm wondering how they're going to move this on beyond this episode. I have an idea, on how they might end up moving it forward, but it's just an idea, and I can't say it because it would spoil what happens in his case. But I mean, I guess you don't bring in a legend like goddamn Mikey from the Goonies, like goddamn Rudy, like Samwise fucking Gamgee for one episode. You give him another one, or at least another one. So I'm cool with seeing Sean Astin come back. And he's also a real piece of shit. And I've never seen Sean Astin play a piece of shit. So I'm kind of cool with that too. Like, I want to see how that plays out. So I guess this is kind of like the moment where I kind of talk about the main story arc, the little bit I know of it. One of the people I've mentioned so far in this video, I probably said like 8 different names, but one of those people dies at the end of this episode. And here's your one spoiler. It ain't Perry Mason. but that's going to be the central mystery of this season. And we don't know why this person was killed or who did it, but the individuals accused of it are no secret because they show them in this season on thing, which I thought was interesting because we don't see these people in the episode. But it's a couple of Mexican kids. I think they look like they're teenagers. And I'm saying Mexican because they're referred to as Mexican. I'm not just calling them whatever the fuck. They call them Mexican in the thing. It's a couple of Mexican teenagers who we don't meet in this episode, but we do see the body discovered at the end of this episode. And I would imagine that the little girl that discovers the body is probably the sister of these two guys. They all kind of look the same. And again, not trying to be racist, but like, I'm telling you, like, they look the same. So I'm imagining like these 2 Mexican teenagers were also there when the girl found the body. Let's see. Oh, and then also we see their aunt in the this season on thing in Perry's office, basically making her nephew's case. So that's how I know that's going to be the main case this season. And we see those guys continuously throughout this trailer. Lastly, I want to wrap up with a couple of quick thoughts. If you're new to this channel, I usually like to wrap up with like random things that I liked or didn't like about an episode. I can't go too hard with it this time because most of those things would always be spoilery. But I do have a couple non-spoilery thoughts. The DA in this episode calls Perry cynical. Then, unironically, I guess, he then immediately talks about what he calls the illusion of justice and how people believe that good people put bad people behind bars and that justice, like, he doesn't go all the way into it, but the idea is that what we consider to be justice isn't the reality. And we see that at play in Sonny's case in this episode. And I just thought that was really funny that you would call someone else cynical and then immediately in the very next sentence say some real cynical fucking shit. That's true, but still cynical fucking shit. Then the DA closed the same scene. Perry walks away kind of like with like a fuck this guy attitude. And then he looks at Della and goes, does everyone feel Mason hates them or just his friends? I like the or just his friends part. like, I don't know why that was funny. Like, is hatred exclusive to his friends? Like, what, does all his friends feel like he hate him? And then, remember the last season, the whole thing with the one lady who wanted to buy Perry's house? And I think she said it was like near a runway or something like that. And she wanted to use that space. Well, he shows up at his old house at the end of this episode. She's still there. She's turned it into a bar. And I believe, it seems, she invited him to Cabo San Lucas with her. So I think it's safe to say they probably gonna start fucking again. and that's how I'm gonna end this episode. So, this video. So, expectation, full coverage of this full season. I really enjoyed this show, so I fully intend on covering each and every episode. So you can check for those every Monday afternoon. And I will see you guys next week for episode 2. And until then, peace.